Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Costain. The Nature-Friendly Farming Network has unveiled its manifesto ahead of the upcoming UK general election. The farmers' organisation is calling, amongst other things, for a fit-for-purpose agricultural budget. I spoke to Chief Executive Martin Lyons and I asked him what that means.
Well, if we look at the current budget, it's been set for a long period of time, and with inflation and cost of delivering, isn't significant enough to deliver the ambition of this government and the next government. If we look at the seriousness of halting and the cost of halting nature's decline, managing and mitigating for climate, and supporting farmers in having infrastructure that delivers food security for now and for the future, a significant increase in budget is needed. And that really needs to be delivered right across the UK to meet the government's ambitions around nature and climate.
Now, you're talking about £6 billion within your manifesto, which is around double the current budget. What would farmers have to do to earn this extra money?
I think a lot of what they've already been doing, but a lot of it would be like new hedgerows, managing trees, increasing tree planting, managing waterways, slowing flow of water down, natural flood management, increasing pollinating areas and areas for birdseed mixes. All of this extra natural capital or environmental features have a cost to farmers to implement. If I increase the number of miles of hedgerows I have, my cost of management goes up. And the real need of this budget is to support farmers in delivering them environmental improvements across our farm landscape, which are a public good, and they don't get rewarded from the marketplace of food production. So it's around, really delivering a nature-friendly farming landscape at a landscape approach in really delivering for the targets that society has in halting nature's decline, in improving and supporting food production in a healthier, productive landscape, and mitigating against climate change.
Now, last year, a report for the RSPB, the National Trust and the Wildlife Trusts called for a budget increase to at least £4.4 billion. You're talking about £6 billion. Is there a firm basis for that number?
No, there's a lot of basis to it, and a lot of the organisations like Link, the environment groups, and this is a UK budget. There is evidence behind what is needed to deliver on the government's targets, what is needed to support long-term food production in focusing on soil health and systems approach. So there is all evidence behind that. It's not just a figure picked out the air, because as a farmer, let's double it again, because that would be a benefit. We need to understand the costs of managing the environment for farmers, and farmers manage 70% of the landscape. So there's a real opportunity to really encourage farmers to deliver at scale and at pace that will deliver not just for farmers, but also for society. And the society can help contribute towards that.
At a time of economic crunch, when every government department wants more money from the Treasury, have you spoken to political parties? What do they think of this proposal?
We have spoken to many of all the political parties. We're going to have to show value for money. That the Treasury has many calls on it, and farming is only, and the environment is one. But as farmers, we can really demonstrate the value for money. For the pound that you put into farmers, they're delivering £3 to £7 benefit to society. So it's really good cost savings, particularly when we look across government departments around health and environment and climate. Farmers can deliver right across that broad spectrum. The focus is in the DEFRA pot, but actually the value should be spread across government departments, because we can deliver for many outcomes the society needs and the government needs to pay for.
So you think that it's not just DEFRA that should be contributing, but, for example, Department of Health?
Yeah, very much so. I had it put to me the other day that Department of Health is the Department of Sick. The Department of the Environment is the Department of Health. We need to refocus around how do we manage our landscape to deliver cleaner air, cleaner water, natural access to nature, which improves mental health, so we can cut the mental health bill. We really need to look at the budget agriculture, or DEFRA, gets in a bigger context of delivering for society.
So we've talked about an increased farming budget, a carrot if you like, but does there also need to be a stick? Do we need better enforced regulation too?
Yeah, I think it's only fair that if we're incentivising farmers and land managers to do good stuff, we also need to be focusing on how do we stop bad stuff happening. And we already know that much of the regulation isn't really enforced particularly greatly. There's not the resources in the budget to do that. And as a farmer, I find it very disappointing sometimes that if I'm trying to do the right things and be rewarded for those, I can look in my landscape and see people not doing the right things, but are getting away with it. So why would I want to incur inconvenience to do other things? So there needs to be a carrot and stick. And I'm always a proposal and talking, when we talk to governments now, of a 3-strike rule. The first time should be an engagement to help you see where there may be some funding, how you should stop for those minor infringements. But if you're a repeat offender, I'm sorry, you should go, almost straight to jail, not literally, but that fine should come in to really make you change and improve your system. We just need a fairer baseline that everyone works to, that is regulated and enforced, and you can't get away with causing pollution or risk.
And of course, those that are operating below those regulatory standards are putting farmers like yourself at a competitive disadvantage as well. Now, you suggested there that farmers should be prosecuted. This is something that doesn't happen very often in Britain. Do you really think that more farmers need to be taken to court if they fail to meet basic standards?
Farming is no different than any other industry. If our activity is causing pollution and we are knowingly and willingly doing it, there has to be a penalty. There's a society penalty for any industry, and farming should be no different. But we recognise that many farms are going to need some help and support to, one, recognise they may be causing problems if they're unaware, which we have to take that on a case by case, but also a road to improvement. And that might mean significant investment, that might mean significant changes. And we just need some time for many business to understand the rules, supporting a change in direction, and have time to deliver those improvements.
The manifesto also talks about the need for a fair and transparent supply chain. What needs to change?
If we look at the current supply chain, there's little value actually coming onto farms. There's lots of value within the supply chain, and a lot of practices that are disadvantaging farmers and hiding the unintended consequences, that encouraging farmers to harvest crops in the winter when it's really poor soil quality to meet a contract and a specification, is causing harm. And we need some of that cost of production in contracts that cause harm on a landscape to be fairly rewarded and not just picked up by the farmer, but also the fair cost of production. We know many contracts are not in fair cost of production, and we're importing produce at a lower standard that we're enforcing in the UK.
You seem to be suggesting there that we need to return to a greater level of seasonality. Is that right?
Very much so. We know nature gives us abundance at different times of the year, and that's when the 2-for-1 offers, or any promotion should be, matches in when there's an abundance of crop. And we need to understand that having a food available all year round has a cost to our environment. Having strawberries 12 months of the year, having certain vegetables available, that means they come from other places. And if we can produce a lot more fruit and vegetables in the UK, but only at certain times of year, and that should be the abundance time when we eat it, but also process it, and we put it in cans and in freezers for later in the season.
Now, you've talked about the need to be able to sell at least above the costs of production, which is something that farmers have said they've needed for a long time. How do we actually achieve that?
I think we need some transparency in what costs are and what contractors are, the contracts to suppliers, and then sort of open it up to have an honest, where are we? And sort of get people to understand that if the suppliers do not support and give farmers enough money to invest in the system, they will come out of production. Farmers are becoming very increasingly affected by climate, by cost of production, and choosing to say it's too high a risk, there's not enough margin. That will really sort of undermine food supply and those industries in the future, because what I stop producing today means there'll be an effect next year because that crop won't be there to be harvested. And we seem to have a supply chain focus on very short-term contracts, short-term delivery, and we need a length of contracts and transparency in who's making the margins.
You mentioned climate there, Martin, and just finally, I want to address ecological security. How do national and international supply chains need to change to prepare society for an accelerating level of climate breakdown?
I think they need to take some ownership of their supply chain and understand the impact that is having. We are already seeing many of the major supply chains actually investing in farmers to move to more regenerative systems and supporting practices that are heading in those directions. And I think any future corporation that doesn't focus on its supply chain and its resilience to climate change will have major problems in putting products on shelves. So it is the only way food, those companies will have food available to sell. And that means working with farmers, but also not just in the UK, it's going to be globally, because we may get a global weather event in the UK that undermines our production, and we will need to import produce from other places. But the flip will happen on another year, that we will have an abundance, and that means we have some exportable surplus. And we need to be working at a more global level to deliver that long-term food security.
The UK is currently around 60% self-sufficient. Do you think that we need to have a national target to increase that level of self-sufficiency to, for example, 70 or 80 or even 90%?
I think if we look at the self-sufficiency figure, it's skewed because it doesn't, a lot of the citrus fruits, there's lots of stuff we are choosing to eat that we cannot produce. So we're never going to be self-sufficient in it. But we should really focus on those items that we could be self-sufficient in, which and fruit, vegetables, apples, pears, stuff that we are importing huge quantities of that we could be producing. So we need to look at the matrix and the measure to make sure we're accounting for the right stuff. And we really should be focusing on those areas we are good at, and we have a climate that can produce that product, not just at the cost of production, that it's cheaper currently to import, but it won't be in the future when they have a drought or have a weather impact.
That was Martin Lines from the Nature Friendly Farming Network. More news on our website, 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.